Okay, so the way I see it, there's two types of tourists, right? You've got your highly organized, slightly neurotic tourists. Let's call them Type A, right? Type A, they're the kind that insist on planning, booking everything in advance, and insist on arriving painfully early for everything, just in case, right? And then you've got the fly by the seat of your pants type of tourist. We'll call them Type B, right? Type B never books anything in advance and always insists on arriving in just the nick of time to avoid that painful boredom of having to wait. Okay, so I'll admit it, from time to time the Type B tourist might miss your odd train or bus, and very, very occasionally an international flight. And not everyone will agree with me, but I think both types of tourists have their own merits. So several years ago I was travelling with a close friend of mine who I've known for more than 10 years. Tom is your classic Type A tourist. He's the kind of guy who not only insists on locking up his suitcase with those ridiculous mini padlocks, you know the ones I'm talking about, but he also insists on locking up his day pack while it's on his back. Which means every time he needs to pay for something, or a tissue, or even to look at the map, or hey, to have a sip of water, he has to fumble with this ridiculous mini combination first. But notwithstanding that, Tom's a great friend, he's a great guy, and he's actually a really good travel companion, and we've travelled together many times. So we were in Japan visiting a mutual friend, Joe. Joe was living in Tokyo working as a performer at Disneyland. So we spent a couple of days in Tokyo, and when Joe finally got a couple of days off work, we all travelled together, the three of us, to Kyoto. Now I'm not sure why, but for some reason Joe had some sweet deal through work where he got some fancy hotel entirely at Mickey Mouse's expense. So we spent 2 nights prancing around in bathrobes and emptying the minibar and enjoying room service. It was great. But 2 days passed and Joe had to go back to work, so the fancy hotel was over. But Tom and I decided to stay in Kyoto for a few more days. So we head to the train station to farewell Joe, and we decided to locker our bags because we knew we wouldn't be able to check into another hotel until the afternoon anyway. And so throughout the day, Tom tries several methods, and at the beginning of the day he's trying to be subtle, like, oh hey Olivia, like, let's just try finding a new hotel before lunchtime. And then later on he's like, hey Olivia, like, let's have lunch near the train station and then we'll find a new hotel after lunch. Like, yeah, whatever. And by the afternoon he's just getting outright whiny, like, Olivia, I really think we need to find a new hotel to stay in. And I'm like, okay, fine. So I finally relent. It's about 4 or 5 o'clock and we start heading back to the train station. So the reason that we decided to stay on in Kyoto and let Joe go back to Tokyo was that it was Gion Matsuri, which is some annual festival in Kyoto to appease the fickle gods. And I don't know much about the festival, but what I do know is that it's fantastic because all these alfresco bars and restaurants and sort of little snack stores set up along the streets, and people are out eating, drinking, and just having a good time. So we're on our way back to the station, but it's one of these streets lined with restaurants and bars, and I see this sign that says freshly pressed sake. And I'm like, wow, well, I've never had freshly pressed sake. What is that? So I managed to convince Tom that we'll just have a really quick drink. Because how could we go back to Australia and say we'd passed up the opportunity to try freshly pressed sake? And so, for those of you who don't know what it is, freshly pressed sake is unfiltered and it's unpasteurized and it has a much higher alcohol content than regular sake. I later found out. But it is delicious. Absolutely delicious. So we have one, and then we had another, and I think we had another one, and Tom finally is starting to relax as our brains are clouding over like the sake that we're drinking. And at one point we decided that some food is going to help us. It's going to give us a bit of strength for our impending search for a hotel and perhaps sober us up a little bit. But what we didn't realise is that all of these traditional festive foods, in fact, have traditional festive drinks that go along with them. And so from that point on, things really start to unravel. And later on, you know, in the ensuing days, I found hilarious pictures on my camera from that night, including one where Tom and I are in the line at 7-Eleven, apparently buying some more booze, with a bunch of these young Japanese boys that we seem to have befriended, who I feel like must have been a basketball team. They're all wearing these big baggy singlets and their caps turned backwards. Anyway, the memories are hazy, but at some stage in the night, the festival starts to wind down and all the stores pack up, and Tom and I haven't forgotten that we need to find somewhere to stay. So we, get a bit sensible and we decide to head back to the train station to finally pick up our bags and find a hotel. So when the first hotel that we rock up to says, oh, no, we're fully booked, I'm not overly concerned. I mean, it was the closest hotel to the train station. That could happen. But then when we start to hear the same response 3, 4, 5, 6 times, then I know we're really in trouble. We're trudging from hotel to hotel, hours. At one point, we almost convinced this young woman to let us sleep in the hotel staff common room. Almost. So exhausted and sinking steadily into this post-drunk depression, we sit down in a gutter to rest. And you're probably wondering if Tom's not slightly pissed off at me at this point, blaming me for the crappy situation that we're in. But Tom's just not that kind of guy. He's an eternal optimist and a real Mr. Fix-It kind of guy. And you know what? I think the second sake might have even been his idea. So Tom being Tom, we're sitting there and he's busy brainstorming solutions, and all of a sudden he looks at me and he says, hey Olivia, an internet cafe. At which point I look back at him, and I'm actually living in mainland China at the time. And the words internet cafe conjure up this traumatic image of sticky floors and seedy lighting and the stench of cigarettes mixed with sweaty teenage boys, and I'm just like, no way. But Tom's sure. So Oscar Wilde once said, we're all in the gutter, but some of us are looking in the stars. And it just so happens that we look up, and sparkling in the distance above our heads are the signs. It's a sign that says Internet Cafe. And as it turns out, a spot in a Japanese internet cafe, compared with other places in the world, is like travelling first class compared to travelling economy. So as we're being shown to our individual entertainment booths, decked out with broadband internet, a flat screen TV, DVD player, padded headphones, soft flooring, and a fluffy blanket, Tom and I both breathe a huge sigh of relief. There's a snack bar, manga library, and bathrooms at the end of the corridor, our hostess tells us. She didn't even seem to notice our dishevelled appearance, or the fact that we smelled of sweat, sake, and several seafood snacks.